She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fischer Said Podcast with your host, Lisa Fischer.
Okay, my own personal functional nutritionist. That's what you are, right? Nutritionist or nutritionalist? Am I saying the word right?
Well, my certification is functional nutritional therapy practitioner, but that's a mouthful. So most people just say nutritionist.
Okay, well, so that's what you are for me, and you've been helping me. I've known you for several years. You've been in Little Rock. You are now in another state, which is great. You can help people virtually, and that's kind of what we do. And so we can use, I'm allowing you, you're not violating any HIPAA laws if we talk about what I've been doing, because I'm giving you complete permission. I'm signing that piece of paper saying to share it with you and the rest of the world, because I need to make clear that I also have my nurse practitioner who helps me on the prescription writing part of this journey, but you have people that do that if they don't have somebody, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Isn't that amazing? Wasn't that a gift for people? And that the fact that COVID kind of pushed us into that we were able to see people virtually helped you open up your scope, that the world is your oyster, April Miller.
It really is an exciting time, and I feel it a privilege to be able to support women in that capacity.
Yeah. And I will say it's not just women, but men also get the wonky hormones, don't they?
They do. I don't enjoy working with men quite as much, but we live in a time where men and women are just completely disconnected from their bodies. And we're seeing that in hormone expression in both sexes.
Well, one thing, so last week, we're recording this in February, and last week here in Little Rock, you spoke to a group where you had the cute red boots on, which people need to go to your social media just to see the cute red boots. But you said something that night that I really think we need to start talking about. One thing you and I completely agree on, many, many things. One is sunlight, grounding. But the thing you mentioned was something I'm really starting to delve into, and that is being uncomfortable, whether it's hot weather or cold weather, but stop making your environment so perfect, because we need the hormetic stress, don't we, for our bodies to adapt. So when we have cold weather now, people honk as if they're in front of my street. I go get the mail in bare feet, with no socks on or shoes. They're like, "Oh my gosh, your feet are..." And I go, "No, I'm doing it for my health." So let's kind of expound on what that is, why you need to be outside. If it's really cold, get your butt outside.
Right. And I think that these practices need to be accessible. I mean, we've all heard of, the trend of sauna therapy and cold plunging now, which to me is the extreme, and there's so many health benefits there. But I also think it's nuanced depending on if you're a man or a woman. And so those extremes a lot of times just aren't appropriate for women. We are just much more sensitive to stressors based on our biology because of our main historical role in life is reproduction. And so we need to be very careful of the extremes we place on our body. However, ignoring or avoiding any type of extreme also just weakens our mitochondrial function. And so being practical about it, understanding that when it is, I don't know, to me, 30 degrees outside is ridiculous. I mean, it's so uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
But I try really hard not to bundle up with hats, gloves, and scarves. Yeah. And not that I want to expose myself to, potential for hypothermia. But I want to make sure that I'm feeling that cold appropriately. And the same for hot exposure in the summer.
So our parents really, and our grandparents really lied to us when they said, don't go outside with a hat on, you'll catch cold.
Yeah.
Or you'll get sick. You really won't. You really are strengthening your little soldiers.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's a good way to look at it. The sauna therapy, Huberman's a big proponent of, I think it's 56 minutes a week, or Peter Attia, somebody says, cumulatively and longevity. I hate the sauna. I do it a couple of times a week, only on hair washing day, because it completely wrecks your hair then because you're drenched.
Right.
And I only wash my hair about every 5 days, so you can do the math on how often I go into the sauna. So I try to get 15, 20 minutes. It's hard, But tell me I'm doing something, even though it's not much. Tell me I'm reaching some small goal doing that.
Absolutely. Everything that we do is cumulative. And so I feel like any kind of exposure on any level is doing something. I mean, ideally, I aim for 3 sessions, 20 minutes or less, but I combine it with my workout. And I really do it only on days where I feel really strong. So if I have had a poor night's sleep, or I'm under an inordinate amount of work stress, or maybe my husband and I have had a fight. I mean, all of that, not that we fight often, but all of that affects our ability to manage other stressors. And so I'm going to aim for a day where I feel really good in general to have that heat or cold exposure.
Well, tell everybody what your journey is to being vibrant and beautiful and sparkly, because there was about 10 minutes there 4 years ago where you weren't feeling so great. I think that's about when we met. I think your mom had maybe just died and you were going through some changes. And I remember it piqued my interest because I thought, wow, if that's happening to her and she knows all this stuff, it shows none of us is immune.
Right. Well, I want to be clear that I didn't know all the stuff. I felt like I had a specific lane, and my journey through perimenopause and into menopause really threw me a curveball and gave me the opportunity to really expand my knowledge base. And that's what I really want to offer women. You know, even though I have an official title, I really am just an educator. And a sharer and a researcher. And I want to provide the tools for other women to be able to do their own research and not solely rely upon what we are told by our medical professionals. I am not a medical professional, though.
Well, thank the Lord. I mean, so, I've gotten to that philosophy though of truly thank the Lord that you are open-minded.
Yeah, well, I feel like we're all big girls and we just need to be armed with the information to go in and be able to ask the right questions and also be able to say no when our gut tells us, this doesn't feel right. You know, what are my other options? And sometimes it's really hard to find a medical professional that's frankly has the time to listen and is open to listen and also is armed with the information, the correct information to be able to provide alternatives. Unfortunately, in our country, our medical system, I feel our medical educational system is very narrow-minded. And it makes sense because there's so much information out there. You have to pick and choose what you share. There's only so much that they can cover. And so I don't necessarily fault them for that. And yet there's so much more information out there available to us that really affects the bottom line. And I feel like, especially as women, we need to know this. We need to know where to find this and not just settle for what we are told in one specific area.
Now, so with your journey, your mom and dad, you were an only child and they died very close together. So cortisol.
Yes.
Then perimenopause, and then boom, you went through menopause very young.
Yes. Yeah. At the age, and to preface this, I had an ablation. So once again, completely disconnected from my cycle. I really didn't know.
Oh my gosh.
But we are estimating that based on my symptoms alone, that it was likely around the age of 42, 43.
Wow.
That I was fully menopausal. And that really shows the effect of stress on the body.
Yeah.
I had always struggled with anxiety and depression. In fact, probably the first time I was offered a medication or an SSRI was the age of 10, which to me just feels ridiculous to say that out loud. I'd always had crime scene periods, like horrible cramping, running to the bathroom in between classes because I was afraid I was going to have an accident, even though I was doubling up on protection. Missing school and work sometimes, really embarrassing experiences because I just could not control how heavy my period was. And, a lot of women complain about that now to the point that we think that it's normal, but we can't confuse normal with common. And so,
right.
And so,
say that again. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's what your body should be doing.
Exactly. I think that we look around and we see so many women struggle with dysfunction, and we're like, oh, I have that. Okay, well, I guess I'm okay. This is just how it is. And it really doesn't have to be. And I didn't know that. Like, I really started understanding how dysfunctional my period was right about the time that I was menopausal. And then it was like, oh,
almost too late.
all those years of suffering. Yeah. But I have a daughter with the same issues. And so we are slowly working on her metabolic health to help reverse her situation so that when she gets pregnant, if we are blessed to have a daughter or granddaughter, then she hopefully will not have the same estrogen dominant symptoms that played such a significant role. But these crime scene periods really affected my mental health all through high school and adulthood. And fortunately, I didn't have any fertility issues. In fact, I kind of had.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I know, isn't it? It is.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
You had no miscarriages?
I did have one. Well, I suspect based on symptoms, I had 2 miscarriages. I had 1 documented miscarriage in between my second and third child. But wasn't a big fan of hormonal birth control. I had tried it.
You knew better then. That was before. That was kind of ahead of your time.
Well, I actually was on it, and I just felt like garbage. I remember one time talking to my husband going, I bet you in the next 20 years, they're going to come out and tell us how awful this is for us, because this does not feel right. And he was like, well, if you feel that bad, just get off of it. And because I had no experience in alternative birth controls like the fertility awareness method, we got pregnant very quickly and frequently.
Right. Good. That's great. Okay. So do you think the root cause then of the depression and the crime scene periods and
gut issues,
all of it was, then is it estrogen dominance? Is it, what plays into that?
So I do feel like, and this is probably going down a rabbit hole. So my mother was an epileptic, and to the point that she didn't even have grand mal seizures. She had convulsions, and she convulsed multiple times a day. And because of that, she was on a handful of medication, even through pregnancy. And they had told her, you probably shouldn't have a baby. This is really, borrowing trouble. And she was passionate about being a mother, and I don't fault her for that. She was a great mom, but the medication that she took while she was pregnant with me greatly affected my health.
Was that phenobarbital? They used to all take phenobarbital. Do you remember what she took?
Phenobarbital,
Tegretol.
I mean, they just tried everything with her because whatever they did, she convulsed.
And now, April, the science so much about the ketogenic diet and epilepsy is, it's changed people's lives.
Absolutely. And I wish that we had known back then.
I know you just
didn't. She suffered. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. And then what finally took her life at that point?
So breast cancer, and it came on really quickly. She had a really bad experience with a mammogram probably about 20 years ago, and was like, you know what? I'm not doing it anymore. But she didn't. She just mentally and emotionally checked out at that point and was kind of like, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. And she wasn't on top of alternative ways to monitor her breast health. And so I came home from a trip, and my dad had already passed away. And she said, I'm having this weird hip pain, and no matter what I do, it's not getting better. And I was like, well, Mom, you need to go to the doctor for that. And she had just gone through a job change and insurance change. And she was like, I'm a couple weeks away from really being able to go to the doctor and not pay out of pocket. So I think I'm just going to wait. And literally the next day she called me and she's like, I can't get out of bed. Like, you need to call an ambulance. And within 48 hours, she had the diagnosis of stage 4 breast cancer.
Metastasized.
Yeah,
in her bones. So at that point, you were young in your homeopathic or alternative natural approaches. Did they do chemotherapy and radiation on a stage 4 person in her 60s?
They did. I had been in practice, working part-time with women, really around the realm of weight loss, for about 4 years before that. And the funny thing about how the Lord works in our lives is about 6 months before my mom had this diagnosis, I was like, you know what? I feel compelled to go back to school and deepen my knowledge base so that I can serve women that are struggling with autoimmunities or thyroid issues. And not that I ever work with women through a diagnosis framework. That is not my lane, but there are certain nutritional and alternative therapies that can support medical interventions too. And I wanted to be equipped with that knowledge to do that. So I, in essence, closed down my practice and was intending to go back to school when my mother had this diagnosis. And at that point, I just dropped everything to support her.
And how long did she suffer? Was it a
5
long
months.
time? Oh,
5
so
months.
sorry. And
She
you
did
suffered
go-
too.
Yeah, it was one of those where you don't realize the PTSD till it's over.
Well, and then, so with me, we did, we've done some lab work, and I'm going to do some spit tests for you soon. But at that point, that was 4 years ago, right? Were you doing anything to monitor your cortisol output?
No, I wasn't. In fact, at the time, I was a huge proponent for intermittent fasting, basically the 1 meal a day. I really wasn't doing it correctly because I didn't understand how elevated cortisol can mask our hunger cues. And I mistook that for blood sugar balance. And so through this stressful season, I was basically living on coffee and then having a moderate dinner and thinking that I was completely healthy because I wasn't having appropriate hunger cues. And now I understand that I was actually working against myself.
Because of the cortisol production at that point.
Yes.
Which we also see in long distance runners, marathon runners, anyone who's doing, it just, the body needs break. It needs rest.
Right.
And you aren't giving it that. And as people know that I've hung my hat on the intermittent fasting hat holder. And, because with you've helped me, we did the Dutch test. I was trying to think, what did we do? So the Dutch test helped us, the dried urine test for comprehensive hormones to see what I'm doing. And my cortisol probably is just bottomed out after years and years and years of running that schedule of being in the media, of getting up, in the middle of the night to be on the air, homeschooling, all the things. Because I have admitted to you, I'm a dopamine addict. I love the hit. I love the house is on fire. Go do something. Okay. Because I can get a lot done. But what it's done to my health long term is not anything to brag about. But with that, I have flipped my intermittent fasting schedule because of you, because I lift 4 days a week. And on the days I go to lift, but here's what happens. I'm really not that hungry in the morning. This morning I went to lift and I forgot to eat my yogurt or cottage cheese, whatever I do, high protein. There's a high fat, high protein yogurt you can look for. Don't get the fat free, but you have to be a detective and find it. I forgot it today and I got to the gym. So I came home at 10 o'clock. Oh, I hear your dog.
Oh.
I came home at 10 o'clock and had 3 eggs with cottage cheese, and I really packed in some protein. And everyone knew that I used to eat between like 2 and 6. I don't wait that long anymore. I'll eat a lunch here at about 2. I'll have a steak. And then the problem, and I don't know if that's a problem or if it's part of aging, I'm really not hungry then after that because I've had so much of my diet is high satiety foods. I don't waste it on, I'm not snacking or eating crap. I'm not, but I'm eating such high satiety foods and I'm really not hungry after I eat this meal today at 2.
Right.
Or whatever that's going to be. So I'm not doing it. So I also try to tell my brain, I'm not starving you, Lisa. I love you. I'm taking care of you. We're going to get sunlight. I've already walked today. I've already lifted, I'll have some salt. I'm taking some collagen,
Right.
So I think part of that in the beginning when I started fasting and I went straight to a 5 and 6 hour window pretty quickly. I think part of that was it was an emergency, and that was just too much. That's too much cortisol to constantly push out, and not because I never switched from that. People say, well, switch up your schedule. Well, I never did. It was just a habit.
Right.
It was a rut. I'm not a big dieter anyway,
Yeah.
but it's just what fit well for me. But I think long term for me, it was detrimental. Will I ever get back to it? I don't know. My husband likes his one meal a day and snacks, but as we've said, men and women are different.
They are. And you know what? Women are different. And so
Yeah,
I've
right.
also
Women are
come to
different.
learn that, you can't make blatant, this fits everybody's statements,
That's right.
because, there will be someone that will disprove your theory. And so I really do feel like we also have to honor bio-individuality, but understanding the majority of women really do better when they fast in the evenings as opposed to in the mornings.
No, the
We
science is backing that up, though. That's not
Yeah.
just women. That is, we know we are insulin sensitive more in the morning or insulin resistant. Well, as Dr. Fung says, and this is evolutionary, eat when the sun's up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, and I know because I've had a few clients push back saying, that if they were in the northern hemisphere, if they were north of us, though, saying it's 4:45 here and the sun goes down. I'm still at work. And then I'm like, okay, you kind of have a quandary. That's not
Yeah.
forever. That's going to change. But if you can't
Right.
get your food in before the sun goes down, you'll feel better. You'll sleep better.
Absolutely. And I think honoring our circadian rhythm just helps every facet of our metabolism. And honoring the circadian rhythm isn't just about like eating with the sun, but also making sure that we're eating appropriate foods for the season and where we live in the world, because
Well,
that's
let's talk
vastly
about
different.
that. Okay, let's talk about that. So we are in the central part of the U.S. This time of year. A lot of people say only eat what's available at the farmer's market.
Right.
So, seasonally, and right now, I was just there the other day, we're down to a few rutabagas and maybe some collard greens. I mean, there's really not much. It's slim pickings,
Right.
but that's why people can
Right.
and do other things to get them through the season. And that's why chickens are always in style. So I can always have egg and then I have chicken, but I really have
Yeah.
more beef. And so do you try to do that where you are? Because Kentucky's a little further north and
Yeah.
east of where we are now. But
Yeah.
do you try to eat that way? And then as the spring harvest or the spring planting, I'm sorry, but some things will be ready. I think the lettuces are ready maybe in March, some fruits in April. We know the berries in Arkansas, May. Do you try to follow that calendar?
I do. So I'm really limiting my fruit consumption right now in the
Yeah.
wintertime because it's not biologically appropriate.
Right.
Everything that we eat is communication to our cells. It even affects our ability to, well, it affects our mental state. We know that. But, in the summertime when, we have a risk of burning and, our food intake or the types of foods can actually dictate whether or not we're going to burn.
Oh, wait, tell me that. Give me a hint of that. What would help us or force us or push us to burn?
Well, inappropriate light exposure. And so if you're going to
Yeah.
be out, say on a boat in the middle of the day, you want to make sure you're getting that early morning light. But because we're also more insulin sensitive in the warmer months as opposed to the winter months, that's when we can do things that are really, or eat foods that are really protective to our dermis, which are going to be those fruits and the more sugary vegetables, things like that, actually protect the skin. As opposed to the winter time when we're more insulin resistant, we need to be focusing on our starchier vegetables, but in very appropriate quantities based on our insulin sensitivity, or basically how much fat we have to burn or store, or stored fat. And we need to be focusing on the fattier foods in the wintertime, but really monitor our fat intake in the summer.
Isn't that interesting? I interviewed someone recently. She goes by Carrie B. Wellness or something.
Yeah.
I love her. She introduced me to something that I when I had my lab work done, it kind of is making sense. She says even in the winter months, she doesn't supplement with vitamin D because the circadian rhythm, we don't have as much.
Right.
And And then she said then as we get longer days, which by the time this drops, we'll have longer days, then she supplements. Oh, that's it. She supplements then with vitamin D and doesn't with melatonin. And when we have more daylight,
Everything should have a rhythm. I love that.
Isn't that
I love
interesting?
that. Yes, I love it.
That is really, and so when I just checked because I have vitiligo, that does make my, receptors to light are different from yours or my blonde, blue-eyed husband. You and I have similar coloring, but I do have vitiligo, and so my vitamin D stays lower.
Mm-hmm.
My melanocytes, that's it. My melanocytes are kind of compromised, so I have a hard time getting it over 50. And even though I push, but I'm not supplementing during this winter, which I used to supplement. So as we start getting more sunlight hours, I will start supplementing again vitamin D, just because I'm a study of one, just to see, because I would like it. I mean, we know that the outcome for cancer and a lot of diseases is dramatically reduced the higher our vitamin D is. But it's sometimes hard to get because of our coloring. Now, do you notice that you have a harder time getting your vitamin D up 50 and 60, or do you have no trouble?
Well, I actually have a different perspective when it comes to vitamin D ranges based on the research from Morley Robbins' root cause protocol, who went through his certification. So, optimal vitamin D ranges have actually been shifted on the last 50 years. And they say it's based on research. And I would argue that sometimes we look at research from the wrong perspective. I truly try to keep my vitamin D, and this is looking at one marker. There's actually 4 markers that really determine our vitamin D health, but I try to keep my inactive vitamin D level somewhere between 21 and 45. And I know that's a really controversial statement. I know you're probably going to get a lot of backlash for that, but I'm also looking at my magnesium and my vitamin A, which are cofactors for vitamin D.
Right.
And that really helps us, if we have too high inactive vitamin D, which most, allopathic and even functional practitioners have the mindset of the higher, the better.
Yes.
That's really, we see a lot of metabolic symptom suppression when it's that high. It actually also decreases our availability of vitamin A and magnesium. There's a growing body of evidence that a lack of vitamin A is actually linked to most diseases and ailments that we struggle with. And so I just look at vitamins and minerals as a symphony. And so I really try not to single out just one, but understand how they work in tandem and look at foods and strategic supplementation that marries all of these minerals together so that I am optimizing my cell function.
Then what do you do to make sure then your vitamin D doesn't go up?
Well, I don't supplement. I don't supplement traditionally with a vitamin D supplement. I'm going to get the bulk of my supplement seasonally through sunlight during the day.
Right.
And honestly, for most women, I think we overthink it. If you are outside for, 20 to 40 minutes, depending on your skin color, your ancestry, that is sufficient to get 2,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, which is, the typical recommended exposure. If for whatever reason you can't go outside in the warmer months, then, supplementation is where we have it. But if you also look at how people around the world get their vitamin D, if we're looking at, say, people that live close to the Arctic Circle, they are relying on fatty fish. And we know that cod liver oil is an excellent source of vitamin D, but it also has that cofactor of vitamin A in a 10-to-1 ratio, which then that kind of lets me know what we really need to be focusing on, which is the vitamin A.
And vitamin A, is that what retinol is?
Yes.
And so I think of retinol as I put on my skin. So do I take it in a supplement?
I take it in cod liver oil in the winter months. Yes.
Oh, you take a tablespoon or whatever, like your grandmother did?
Yeah. Yeah. That is my go-to for vitamin D, vitamin A exposure.
And then in the summer months, will you try to increase the vitamin D, or will you just get it all from the sunlight?
I try to get it from the sunlight. I also am not just relying on blood work alone. In my practice, we use hair testing, which is to me a more accurate assessment of our minerals. I'm also looking at my urine to see how my body is responding to stressors. And we also do a little bit of genetic testing. I don't heavily rely on it, but we also do stool testing. And I think all of that information together gives us a better idea of the health of our metabolism instead of relying on just one report.
Okay, now let's talk about this uncharted waters for me, and that I'm 100 years old and I may start having a period soon. Now, we've been working on it, but full disclosure, for 2 months, I've done the progestin cycle. What do you call it? When you cycle progesterone, is that the correct term?
Yes.
We're cycling my progesterone. I wish I had it in here. You've given me a chart, and like a pubescent girl, or a girl who's just having her cycle every month, she's not menopausal. The front half of my cycle, I am having a lot of progesterone. And then by day 14 or 15, I'm done of the month, right? And it's what you did, the math is it's the same amount I was taking when I was doing 250 a night or whatever. I can't remember what the math is, but I did that every day of the month. And now I'm just doing this for 14 days, right?
Yes. Yes, it's really based on a different school of thought when it comes to bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. When we think of menopause education, it is sad that we assume that our medical professionals are our go-to resource for menopause.
It's really sad.
I mean, the reality is, they get a few hours, if not one day of menopause training, or
some don't even get that.
Yeah,
they've admitted now, just saying, no, I didn't get anything.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you do find those women that have any level of menopause education, it's because they have taken upon themselves to do that. Right. And there are so many doctors out there that are amazing at providing peri and postmenopause care. But most of them rely on the Menopause Society, previously called the North American Menopause Society. And I'm glad that we have some type of levelizer or governing body for information. Okay, so, but there's actually another growing body of medical professionals.
I already like them better, and I don't even know who they are.
So it's the Women's Hormone Network, and they really think that when it comes to hormones, we should be recreating when we are historically at our healthiest. And I know that this is a little bit like, well, you just said that most women aren't having good periods, but historically we should be. A healthy period, or I should say a healthy cycle, is somewhere between 26 and 32 days. When we experience a period, we should not be having, premenstrual symptoms that are wrecking our lives, that are causing us to, have these mood swings that are causing severe pain, that are causing us to basically just interrupt our lives. And so, a healthy cycle really should be pretty painless. We should bleed for about 4 days minimum, and that amount of blood should be really manageable. It shouldn't be too light too. If we have periods that are too light, that's also an indicator that something isn't working correctly. But the Women's Hormone Network says, when a woman is having a healthy cycle, we are producing optimal levels of serotonin, which we know converts to melatonin. We are producing appropriate levels of testosterone, estradiol. When we have these hormone fluctuations, which is an important nuance for what we call rhythmic physiologic hormone restoration, we are actually getting better protection against cancer cell growth.
Wow.
And you know, this isn't talked about a lot. In fact, it's poo-pooed a lot by a lot of medical professionals that really adhere strictly to the Menopause Society's guidelines. And I don't want to say that one school of thought is better than the other. I just simply want to present women that seek out my support with all of the evidence and then let them make their big girl decision.
Perfect. That's a great way to look at it. So you've kind of done that with me. Now I have kind of put my life into your hands because I'm like, I trust you on this, because I think the worry for anyone, the only beauty of menopause is you don't have a period anymore. You know, that's one of the things we all lock arms about, going, well, at least we're not menstruating.
Right.
So now I'm going to open the Pandora's box again.
Yes.
To have a period. But here is what I need to understand. So in my daughters, who are probably 28 days, cycling 28 days or whatever it is, they're building up their uterine lining, and then for their menses, they shed the lining.
Yes.
And then they start back over. Well,
That's
I
correct.
haven't done that in about 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
So, and we've been waiting. The first few days, I'll probably have to open the floodgates. I probably won't be able to leave Little Rock, or do anything, but what uterine lining does a menopausal woman have?
Well, so we're building it up with that progesterone. And that's, the point of progesterone is it is thickening the uterine lining for a pregnancy or implantation. But the fact is, we have progesterone receptors in every single part of our body. And so we have clients that have had hysterectomies that still really benefit from progesterone replacement.
Seriously? Wait. And so, but they don't bleed though after.
No, well, they don't have a uterus.
They don't have a uterus, right? Okay.
We're basically monitoring their health based on blood work and symptoms, and not the fact that they're having a bleed. I also want to state, because there's a lot of confusion here when women say, could I get pregnant again?
Oh, I texted you that in the middle of the night going, oh no, I may be pregnant.
Right. I mean, the fact is we don't have eggs. And so,
don't have eggs, right.
Once you are fully menopausal, you cannot get pregnant. But if we are cycling our progesterone, you are going to shed that uterine lining, and it will cause a bleed. For most women, it is not a big deal. In fact, I am having what I call my fake period this week.
Your period. We're calling it my period. I'm waiting on my period.
I am just using a regular tampon and moving on with my life.
So do you have mood swings?
Mood swings are one of those premenstrual symptoms that we consider, that we consider common but isn't normal. And so I would say that in general, when my hormone levels are optimized with my hormone replacement therapy regimen, my mood stays pretty stable.
And so in my case, just so people understand what we're working through right now, is you said maybe I didn't have balanced or enough estrogen or estradiol in order. So there has to be a ratio between the estrogen and the progesterone, right? In order for me to have a bleed. So this is my second month, and I did do I did the Dutch with you, and then Lindsay, my provider who writes my prescriptions. You have someone who does yours, but Lindsay's written mine for over 10 years, takes care of my thyroid. She's working with me on it, and we've increased my estradiol and my testosterone, which may not play into this mathematical equation. But you said maybe when you get some more estrogen, then we'll be able to balance it out. So maybe this next month, because that's our goal, is finally to have the bleed, right?
Right. That really is, our first indicator that you have an adequate level of progesterone for the cell health or cell protection that we are looking for.
And, it's a shame we can't put progesterone in the water, because that is the one. If I hear one complaint, I hear it 1,000 times, and you do too. It's the sleeplessness and the anxiety that perimenopause creates, and you are then post-menopause, menopausal the rest of your life. And I hate that some people, April, go to providers who don't give it to them.
Yeah. I'm working with a woman right now that is 68, I believe, and she was denied hormone replacement therapy, even though she was struggling with anxiety, poor sleep, joint pain.
That's criminal.
Yes. And it was because
her rights are being violated.
Yeah. Yeah. And even now, she's gone, we've done a deep dive into her metabolic health, and I've presented her with all of her options for hormone replacement therapy. The medical provider that I've partnered with is not licensed in her state. So we have been searching for a medical provider there that will basically support her hormone needs in the framework that she would like. And it's been a challenge. She's received a lot of pushback. And in fact, this morning she was like, okay, so I have my prescription, but she would really like for me to do a mammogram first, just to be sure. And she's really concerned about my health history because her sister and her mother both had breast cancer. It was caught early. And, just because you have a familial history of breast cancer doesn't mean that you are not necessarily a candidate for breast cancer or for hormone replacement therapy yourself. There's so many other things that need to be discussed. And in fact, she was just dismissed. Oh, your sister had breast cancer. This is not something that you want to do. And she's been suffering silently for years.
I'm so sorry. She hasn't had a good night's sleep in 30 years. Or 20 years, whatever it's been. And I hate that for her, because I would say the magic of sleep. And that was what I was worried about with you, because I do sleep very, very well. And I'm very tight on my circadian rhythms, and obviously morning light, evening light, walking outside. I mean, that's my job. If you ask me what I did for a living, I get sunlight,
right? Because
it does so much. And I was so afraid that I wouldn't get good sleep on the days, because there are 2 weeks I'm not taking any progesterone.
Right.
Like, back when I was 12.
Right.
And it's fine, because you said, I guess we kind of bank it. It's cumulative, and we kind of ride the month out, and then we start back over. Now, I will say there is some psychological relief when I get to start back my progesterone, because I love it so much. Because I know it's nature's sedative. I mean, it makes us feel better, but it is not I haven't had sleep interruptions from changing my progesterone.
Most women don't when we get the dosage correct, and it can be a little bit of trial and error. But, if we look at our normal hormone fluctuations, first of all, our hormones are not static. And yet for the majority of women, when they're offered hormone replacement therapy, they are given a static dose or the same dose every single day of the month. And that's just symptom management. That's not actually helping to improve metabolic health. And I know that's a blanket statement. It's not that we're not getting some sort of metabolic health in brain protection, heart health, bone protection. There's something there. But to me, I try to look at things from an ancestral viewpoint of what makes sense. How do our bodies operate? And cycling my progesterone, changing my dose for both my estradiol and my progesterone based on the day of the month, because I'm trying to mimic that strong peak I would have, around day 10, 11, 12. I'm trying to produce a peak of progesterone a day around day 20 or 21. And there's lots of benefits to those peaks. And we're just, and also we don't produce progesterone every single day of the month when we're having a normal menses. We only produce progesterone after ovulation. So why would we take it every day of the month in menopause? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it's a lazy way to do it. I mean, it's a one size fits all, and there isn't a one size.
Right.
Because none of us is one size fits all.
Right.
Now, one more thing, we're going to wrap it up, but tell me why you're not afraid of getting breast cancer, even though your mother had it and you're on these wonderful, magical, bioidentical hormones.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, wow, that's a loaded question, because according to genetic testing, I have like a 36% risk. I don't put a ton of weight in that. By the way, my genetics has nothing to do with the BRCA gene, which is a completely separate conversation. But, if we look at how estrogen works in the body, even with estrogen receptor or progesterone receptor positive cancer, even though it is growing the cancer, it didn't necessarily cause the cancer. And I think that that's a nuance that we don't talk about. And when we have our hormones, if you think about when estrogen is highest in a woman's body, it's during pregnancy. And yet we're not seeing a lot of pregnant women get cancer. They are out there, but historically, we're not. And so to me, that begs the question of, well, what is actually causing breast cancer, even estrogen-fed breast cancer? And we see that there's a huge impact on liver health. When we are chronically stressed, when we are over-consuming alcohol, when we have some type of blood sugar dysregulation, all of those are contributing factors to breast cancer because that impacts our liver function. And then the consequence of that is our liver can't do its job of getting rid of all of our used hormones. They get recycled back into our tissues, and then that is what feeds cancer. And so to me, cancer is not a hormone problem, but a liver problem. And we really need to be focusing on, frankly, what could be considered our hardest working organ.
You are a friend of the liver. I can tell you that.
I am. Yeah.
Everyone
huge
listening.
into liver.
Yes. I wear my pack every night with my castor oil on it. And I'm a looker at, retainer in my mouth and a castor oil pack. It's a wonder where there'd even be a chance to talk about getting pregnant with that look. But it all works out. Well, April, good job today. So proud of you and your hard work. Thank you for helping people. All your information is in our show notes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fischer Said Podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fischer Said Podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.